6 o'clock.
Thank you. We'd like to start with the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are on the lands of Anishinaabe Nation. This spot where we gather is the traditional land of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Ottawa, Potawatomi, and Ojibwe. We also recognize that this land is now home to the Delaware Nation. This land was settled through the McKee Purchase Treaty of 1790.
Judy, hello.
And we, as beneficiaries of the treaty, must recognize our responsibilities, including our collective responsibilities to the land and water. Madam Chair, we have no supplementary agenda this evening, and we have one disclosure of pecuniary interest, and that is with regards to item 13A, approval of Integra shareholders waiver. Councillor Solomon has declared a conflict. Moving on to deputations, we have one deputation this evening, and it is with regards to item 16B, improvements for Chatham-Kent Public Health Harms Reduction Program, and I'll read that one deputation now. Attention to Mayor Caniff, Council, and Administration. Like many other communities today, Chatham-Kent must grapple with a host of issues associated with the rapid rise in drug use. Along with the misuse of prescription drugs, devastating substances like meth and opioids are becoming increasingly prevalent, readily accessible, and more potent. And the reality is that lives are being lost to overdoses at devastating rates. The good news is the harm associated with substance use are preventable. The financial, societal, and human costs associated with this reality are inescapable and require immediate action and support to change these outcomes. The detailed report that has been submitted by the Chatham-Kent Public Health with consultation from various agencies, services, and individuals to provide the most accurate picture of current issues and challenges with respect to harm reduction and substance use issues in Chatham-Kent. The Chatham-Kent Drug Awareness Council endorses the report and recommendations which reflect CKDX's mission statement of working together with community partners, concerned citizens, and those living with or affected by drug addiction to raise awareness and to reduce and prevent the harms associated with substance use at the individual, family, and community levels. Respectfully submitted, Chatham-Kent Drug Awareness Council. Madam Chair, I now move over to the consent agenda, and we'll put up on the screen the items that will be pulled this evening. It has been requested that 10B, Board of Health minutes from its meeting held on December 16th, 2020, be pulled by Councillor Kirkwood-White and Councillor Latimer. Also, item 12A, housing and homelessness in 2020 and 2021 is pulled by Councillor Latimer and Councillor Kirkwood-White. Item 12B, home share program, has been pulled by Councillor Latimer. Item 13A, we just have a conflict from Councillor Solomon. Item 16A, improvements for the Chatham-Kent Public Health Harm Reduction Program, has been pulled by Councillor Hall and Councillor Kirkwood-White. Item 17B, dedicated gas tax funds for public transportation systems, April 2020 to March 2021 program, pulled by Councillor Kirkwood-White. And item 17D, Erie Shore Drive next steps, pulled by Councillor Thompson and Councillor Latimer. Madam Chair, the remainder of the reports would be 10A, 10C, 11A, 12C, 14A, 15A, 16B, 17A, and 17C be approved in one motion as consent.
Thank you. Could I have Councillor Pincinel and Councillor Foss move in second?
Happy to move it.
Thank you. Councillor Foss?
Yes, I'll second that. Sorry about that.
Thank you very much. And I believe you wanted to go and bring 13A. Oh, sorry. We got the following on. Could I have Councillor McGregor, Carmen McGregor? Oh, sorry. Thank you for your patience with me.
Still waiting for 4 councillors to vote, please. Please remember to hit submit. Yeah. Still waiting for 2 more. Council, can we just please make sure that you've hit submit? We don't have all votes in yet. Okay, all votes are in. Motion passes. Okay,
Moving on to 13A, approval of Integra shareholders waiver.
What happened to 10?
so just to explain, council, this is just a conflict of interest. So we're going to move this up on the agenda as we have, in case there are any questions, and then we'll move back to going through the regular reports where there are questions.
Could I have Councillor McGrail and Councillor Thompson please move and second this motion?
Sure, I'll move this motion for you.
And I'd be happy to second it.
Thank you. Any discussion? Oh, there's Councillor Otier. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just wondering on here, it didn't really let us know what the items were that were for sale, if I'm not mistaken. I was just trying to bring it up at the same time on my other computer as I'm talking to you, but I just want to make sure this is the one that had some information on St. Thomas's fiber optics, as well as a call center, I believe, or is that correct?
Mr. Hogan's on the line. Could you respond, please?
Yes, Madam Chair, I can answer the question. First off, just want to confirm, can you hear me all right?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so yes, Integra's received an unsolicited offer for the purchase of our data center. The data center is on our 320 Queen Street property. And also the potential sales is also for the fiber business that we have in St. Thomas. And then there'll be a few pieces of land that will go with it. So a portion of the land that has the data center in Chatham. There'll also be a small half-acre on the St. Thomas's property. And then on top of our data center is a solar system. So all 5 of those items will go. The main pieces of the transaction are the data center and the fiber business in St. Thomas. We do not have any fiber assets in Chatham-Kent, and our shareholder agreement contemplates that we try and expand the fiber business. And that's why we're looking for this waiver, because there is an opportunity for us to investigate selling the fiber business and also the data center.
Okay, so the data center, is it attached to your main office or it's by itself?
It's a separate building. So we've already been talking to, and the potential purchaser has already been talking to the municipality of Chatham-Kent and going through all the appropriate steps in order to apply for a severance on the 320 Queen Street property. And so that will come forward in the next, I guess, once we complete all the appropriate steps. That'll be going to the, I think it's the planning department at the municipality of Chatham-Kent.
Okay, great. Just one last question through acting mayor to you. Does that will the will the license for establishment that is on that parking lot, will that stay with us?
I'm assuming it does. It's not part of any discussions and anything with the potential purchaser. So whatever status that license is in, it will remain in that in its current state.
Okay, great. Thanks you very much.
Any other questions? Oh, I see Councillor Sakachi. Go ahead, Councillor Sakachi.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Vladimir. Mr. Hogan, just for the public, I had a couple of questions that came in, and they're pretty straightforward questions. I do know the answers, but I think for public perception, it's good to answer. There's no financial implications to Integris customers, or it's not going to change any type of business that Integris is performing currently, correct?
These are what I would consider and what the Ontario Energy Board would consider are unregulated businesses. Therefore, they do not impact the costs or the rates on the electricity customers that Integris serves.
Thank you. And the last one is similar as well, just for the clarification and community. No service impacts to the current customer base is also going to be impacted by any of these shareholder agreements here.
That's great. That's correct. Again, these are unregulated businesses that are that are not directly involved in the distribution of electricity, and they're not part of our core business. And our core business is distributing electricity, so therefore it will have no impact.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan. Just thought it was very beneficial to clarify for the public. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Seeing no other hands or questions, we'll call the vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good evening.
Moving on to item 10B, Board of Health minutes from its meeting held on December 16th, 2020.
Councillor Kirkwood-White.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. There is a reference in the Board of Health minutes as well as in the item number 16 on the harm reduction program to an application that was submitted for the Community Opioid Overdose Capacity Building Initiative. And I would like either April Redyke or Emily Gurin to provide an update on the outcome of that grant application, please, and to perhaps elaborate a little bit on the work that is being done.
Through you, Acting Mayor, it's April Redyke, General Manager, Community Human Services. We have Teresa Bendo and Emily Guerin are on the line, so I am going to let them address this question for Councillor Kirkwood-White. They've done really the bench strength of work to make this happen, so I'll let them fill council in. Thank you.
Thank you, April. This is Teresa Bendo, the Director of Public Health. So through you, Acting Mayor Latimer, thank you for the question, Councillor Kirkwood-White. We are actually quite excited about this project as we were one of 3 communities approved for this grant. So back in December of 2020, Chatham-Kent Public Health, in collaboration with the United Way and Rock Missions, submitted a funding application for this Community Opioid Overdose Capacity Building Initiative through Public Health Ontario. And the goal of this initiative is really to support networks and organizations who are responding to opioid overdoses and related harms. And so we're quite excited that this proposal was approved, and the partnership will receive $75,000 over the next 4 years to expand a peer-led outreach program in Chatham-Kent. So people with living or lived experience of substance use will really shape all the aspects of this peer outreach program. And the services will be provided and tailored and really driven by the priorities that are important to them. So the United Way will support the peer-to-peer project team and mobilize the community resources. Rock Missions will really be the boots on the ground, our community outreach workers. And Chatham-Kent Public Health, we provide a little behind-the-scenes support, responsible for managing the funds, liaising with Public Health Ontario, and really helping with overall project oversight and management and supporting the evaluation of the project. So really quite excited about this opportunity.
Congratulations. This is something that really deserves a lot of attention, and I congratulate you. I know that the deadline for the application was quite short, and you rallied the troops to get it in on time. And being one of 3, that's quite accomplishment. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Kirkwood-White. I also had a comment. I noticed, Teresa, in the minutes, you noted available ongoing training on page 3 and 4 for those councillors who maybe haven't up to date or up to this date taken time to check these this education. It's called Let's Talk Equity, Social Determinants of Health, and ABCs of Indigenous Awareness. These are very short, 6 minutes to however long you want to delve into the topic, but they really they really hit home for me, because right before I reviewed these minutes on my council package, I was working on my municipal climate leadership course homework. And I had just finished reading the first chapter of David Miller's brand new book called Solved: How the World's Great Cities Are Fixing the Climate Crisis. And this is what he said: the best city climate plans reduce greenhouse gas emissions effectively, but they also do something else. They address issues of prosperity, health, and inclusion, thereby putting cities in a unique position to deliver on both meaningful climate action and social justice. And I think as councillors, we should always be actively applying this lens, the social determinant lens, equity lens, when we're planning and making decisions for the better good of all in our community. So thank you, Teresa, again, for including these educational opportunities in your board reports for us to read. If there's nothing further, is there anyone opposed to accepting this report? Oh, we do need a mover and a seconder. So could I have Councillor Kirkwood-White and Councillor Hall?
So moved.
Seconded.
Thank you. Anyone opposed? Very good. On to 12A, housing and homelessness. Councillor Kirkwood-White, you're up.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. This is a question for either Polly Smith or Ray Harper. There is a reference in the report to council on page 10 to staff exploring the feasibility of purchasing a vacant building that could be used for a blended emergency and transitional housing model, while also having the ability to convert it later on in the future to affordable housing. And assuming that there were few individuals from our constituent base that had an opportunity to read this really very comprehensive 23-page report, I just wondered if Polly or Ray could elaborate on the process that is being considered to identify a suitable location, and maybe who is being consulted with regard to this opportunity. Because I noticed that there's a reference to an estimated cost of $4 million for a purchase, and $100,000 per month for maintenance and life cycle. So it's likely that there's been some homework already done. And then I have another couple of questions after that.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. This is Ray Harper, Director of Housing Services. To Councillor Kirkwood White, if I may, I'd like to start off with the answer to this. With respect to the question regarding if are we working closely with the municipal departments, and what are we doing to review these assets? I think this is a really good timing for this question because Polly and I have been actively working with IES, CD, and ITT teams here at the municipality to develop an extensive and dynamic inventory system through our current GIS mapping platform. We have the initial data set up and are working at fine-tuning this model to scrub and filter out buildings and land that would not be suitable for our purposes. So, for example, if there are, let's say, 700 municipal properties in the system, and a lion's share of these are little bits of parcels spread all over, as in undevelopable lands next to roads, in between buildings, alleyways, etc. That way we could look at this data set and see what of these assets we could then fine tune to locations, minimum size requirements, current zoning and possible zoning services like water, sewer, hydro. And then the greatest needs with respect to the supportive, transitional, and affordable housing is in the city of the Chatham location. The focus on reviewing this data at this time for the Chatham area with respect to these needs are also going to be reviewed with the surrounding communities areas for affordable housing opportunities concurrently. While we haven't had a chance to review this data in depth yet due to working on finalizing these filters that I just mentioned, my thoughts that we have greater chance of success finding a suitable vacant parcel of land to build on our current inventory versus having perhaps, say, a suitable building already that would meet our needs. Now, with regards to part of your question about the $4 million building part, I don't have any information from my perspective on that, so I wouldn't be able to answer that part of the question.
I understand that there is a report coming to council a little later on with regard to that particular aspect of the report. But the exercise that you're going through right now, would that also be applicable to helping locate a building or piece of property for the Indwell project that we're working on as well?
Thank you. Yes, this would help with that as well as some other initiatives. So we'd be able to actually review at least the inventory that we currently have to see that what would be suitable for that initiative.
Okay. And one final question. In the report, it's noted that Chatham-Kent Housing Services teams have managed all aspects of the community housing administration since 2002. And that serves and also serves as the local housing corporation for 694 units of public housing, and then also acts as the service manager for 13 private nonprofit housing providers with another 774 rent geared to income units. Just curious, as a newcomer to council, how was this community housing oversight undertaken prior to 2002? And that will require someone, I think, that's been around for a while to answer.
Thank you, you Acting Mayor. I did some digging with regards to the history on this. Now, this is prior to me joining the municipality. But prior to the devolution of public housing in January 2001, the Ontario Housing Corporation had local housing authorities, LHAs, across the province with local boards responsible for the delivery of public housing services. The province, OHC, funded it, and they had OHC policies that they had to follow. To prepare for the devolution of public housing, province transformed the LHAs to local housing corporations, LHCs, and transferred the assets and liabilities to the LHCs, making the service managers the sole shareholder of their LHC. CK Council, under the previous general manager of Community Human Services, at the time it was Health and Family Services, I believe, Lucy Brown's guidance had approved the recommendation to have this LHC brought in-house and would dissolve it as soon as possible. According to the Social Housing Reform Act regulations in 2001, Chatham-Kent was the only service manager to have its public housing portfolio transferred directly to it versus via LHC. By March 1st, 2001, the former LHC staff have been relocated into our current location, although the first floor back then. Public housing was the first stage of social housing devolution. The second stage of social housing devolution was the community social housing. This included both the formal unilateral federal and formal unilateral provincial and formal combined federal provincial social housing programs. To prepare for the devolution of formal unilateral federal housing, the federal government had devolved housing programs to the province in January 1st, 2000. SHRA was passed in December 2000. So the provincial ministry staff were still working with a formal federal housing staff on quickly learning their programs as they were preparing municipal service managers to take it over in 2002. These programs were transferred to service managers over a number of months between January 1st, 2002 and May 2002. Chatham-Kents were transferred in April 1 of 2002. So in short, prior to the devolution of social housing, the private nonprofit groups were program administered and funded by either federal housing, CMHC, or provincial housing, MMAH, ministry staff in the Southwestern region. Funding for social housing was part of the provincial local services realignment. So essentially, it was provincially downloaded for us, the municipality, to provide these services as mandated. I hope this answers your question.
You know, it really does pay to give administration some of our questions that we're going to ask in open session. Thank you very much, Ray, for the history lesson. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
I also, as a counselor, had some questions. I think, and I had sent them in through Judy to Polly and Josh, and I think Josh is online tonight, correct?
That is correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Josh, I just wondered if you, I actually want to thank you both for a well-written, detailed report that clearly spells out what we have achieved and what still needs to be accomplished regarding housing here in Chatham-Kent. It's a complicated, connected, wicked issue, actually. So I wondered, on page 5, you said CK Cares Partners currently deliver the 8 listed programs below with ESS, with Employment Social Services. Who are the Chatham-Kent Cares Partners? And how would they work in conjunction with the Chatham-Kent Emergency Rapid Rehousing Response model that you want to bring in? Would any of those programs be no more? And actually, are those programs all municipally staffed, and would CHIRP ultimately reduce the overall numbers or staffing costs?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. This is Josh Myers, Program Manager with Employment and Social Services. So I'm going to do my best to go through the question, but of course, if I miss a piece, please let me know. CK Cares is our coordinated access system, and it's currently made up of the Salvation Army, Canadian Mental Health Association, Chatham-Kent, Chatham-Kent Women's Centre, the House of Soccer Scene, and Employment and Social Services. ERP, or the Emergency and Rapid Rehousing Program, it's not going to have a major impact on how this coordinated access works. And the reason for that is individuals that access are looking for emergency housing. And because the program will work directly as a door agency, essentially what it means is someone's going to attend this program to meet their immediate need, but by signing a consent through our database and through our collective partnerships, we're able to take the information that we need, share that amongst our CK Cares partners, and then from there, while staff are working on the rapid rehousing, we're able to explore what additional programming might meet this individual's needs to not only get them housing, but to keep them housed. This is done in a way so that people don't have to rely on going to the right program at the right time to kind of jump the wait list. We do a prioritized wait list through these 5 agencies. With respect to changing or will this eliminate any programs, emergency housing is in addition to the current programs that we currently operate. So of the 8 that we have listed there, they are currently delivering a variety of programming. Take for instance, the community relations program. They work with largely at-risk seniors in the community, making sure that their housing is maintained, that they're accessing all federal and provincial funding programs eligible. The Shelter Solutions program, that program has seen a big shift in 2020, as we've seen our need in the community really shift to a large number of people needing emergency housing. That program typically or historically would focus more on homeless prevention, and we've been able to shift some of the workers from that program to the rapid rehousing program. I believe there was a question regarding which programs are staffed by municipal staff. I'm just going to sorry. Okay, so this the Shelter Solutions program, it is staffed by the municipality, but also by the Salvation Army. CMHA's ICM program is completely staffed by CMHA. Our Homes for Youth program, which is a supportive housing program for youth, it has a unique partnership where we are partnered with the House of Soccer Scene and CMHA. We provide the housing benefits to the individuals, and they provide the direct supportive staffing, while we also provide some municipal staff to be case managers for lower needs youth in that program. The Chatham-Kent Women's Center previously provided the on-call support for the homeless response line, while case management support was provided by the Ontario Works case managers. And our Survivors of Domestic Violence is a partnership between the ESS and the Chatham-Kent Women's Center, in which staff provide provincial funding and benefits through individuals that access either door. It's important, I believe, to note, though, that all of these programs are provincially funded. And part of why we look at these unique relationships and partnerships is trying to make sure that we're able to put the best training agency in the community to assist those that are accessing the supports. Some of our employment, or not some of, all of our employment and social services staff are trained in the Ontario Works program and legislation. So a lot of times when we're out, let's say with Rock Missions providing rapid rehousing supports, we're able to make sure that those individuals that might be seeking homeless prevention support, we're also able to see, is there any other provincial funding that we can access for them? Because our homeless prevention dollars are in short supply, we want to make sure that we're able to kind of bridge that gap with anything provincial or federal where possible.
Thanks, Josh. These are 2 questions that I had come to me from the community. Actually, it just happened to come when this report was. I don't think it was necessarily planned that way. But what is the client worker ratio currently versus what you would see, what we'll see when the CHIRP model is in full bloom?
For sure. This is a difficult question, I think, for us to answer, because there isn't necessarily a client worker ratio like there would be in, for say, the Ontario Works program. The ratio currently is based on part of what the facility that we're operating in, what they need for security and client service. We do try to follow best practices. So the rapid rehousing team is typically a 1:25 ratio. However, that's based on the needs of the individuals. And as we're exploring that, it does fluctuate. I think I can answer this better in saying that currently at ERC, we have 3 staff plus security during the day shift, 4 staff plus security on afternoons, and 2 staff plus security overnight. In a 24-hour cycle, we have 3 less staff currently than what we did at the Bradley Center. Any future building or model is really dependent on that specific building. So it's very difficult for us to predict what operation cost would be. The Bradley Center being a very large and congregate setting, that allowed us to house more people, but it also required more staff because it's a very stressful environment for those staying there. So staff would spend more time focusing on basic needs and than on housing support and getting people out of those centers. So there are different nuances with different buildings, and I believe that's partly why when we know more of what's available and what recommendations there will be a future report back to council.
Okay, thanks. Second last question. How many of the people that you have housed since October 28th remain housed?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Of the 28 since October, 82% of this group are still housed. So 5 people have returned to homelessness, and we're currently exploring what went wrong and what can we try differently this time. I think it's important for us to,
Go ahead.
I was just going to share part of the difficulty that we face is there's still a severe lack of supportive housing in the community. So although our rapid rehousing team is focused on getting people into housing, while we still have wait lists for those programs, and I know Indowell will do a great job at reducing some of those wait lists, we run the risk of not having the supports needed. So we do expect that some will return to homelessness. We and I don't believe any other agencies have ever been able to predict who it will fail with. So we'll continue to try, we'll continue to work with them and progressively engage them to connect with what services we currently have while we work on bridging that gap.
One last question. And of your current caseload, what would you say the percentage of are not interested in pursuing long-term housing, since there was part of your report related to that?
Yes, thank you. Interest is very difficult for us to, I think, measure. It's very fluid. People move in and out of readiness with changes to life circumstances. What I can share is our rapid rehousing team works very closely with Rock Missions, who's gained a lot of trust in the community. And they've helped us get out in the community and start working with individuals that are sleeping rough. Now, our data says there's anywhere between 5 and 10 individuals that are sleeping outside on any given night. Now, I would be hesitant to say that we are doing this out of choice, but I would note that for some, they're not interested in what we can offer on that day, and others, we're not able to support them in emergency housing because of our capacity at that time.
Thank you, Josh. And one last question about the homeless response line. The cost is $110,000 a year. How is this cost being evaluated for effectiveness? And would this cost be eliminated or reduced with the CHIRP model?
Yes, thank you. All of our provincial programs, so we are required to report back to the Ministry of Community and Social Services every year on all of our outcomes. It's part of the investment plan that we have to make at the beginning of the year, and then going through those outcomes to report back what did we achieve with the provincial funding that they provided us. With respect to the homeless response line, we have notified our partner, the Chatham-Kent Women's Center, that we are ending the service contract as the new model. It's essentially made the previous model obsolete.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Could I have, if there are no further questions, I don't see any, could I have Councillor Crew and Councillor Harrigan move this report, please?
If they don't replicate.
I'll move it to receive it for information.
And
I will second that.
Thank you. And we'll. Sorry about that. Anyone opposed? Seeing no one, we'll move on to 12B, home share program. Alrighty, I think I'll speak to this since it's in response to my motion. I first of all want to thank Tara for the report. It had a lot of good information in it, and I am in agreement with her recommendation that the municipality at this time not fund a home share program. But I did talk with April about setting forth a recommendation. Is that up on the screen. There it is. Alrighty. You'll see what I'm asking, or what I'd like to see happen, is that a virtual information session be held before the end of April 2021, inviting community agencies and partners, as well as members of the public interested in learning more about the home share program, and report back to council with the outcomes from this consultation no later than June 2021. All information and data learned during the writing of this report will be shared with participants, with the intent being for a willing participant or community group to lead a home share program for Chatham-Kent. And before I speak to that a little more, could I have Councillor Crew second that motion?
Trains and ride share.
Acting Mayor, I don't think I can support that. So I'd rather not second it, if you don't mind, because I don't think I can support this.
Is there anybody else who would second that motion? Oh, Councillor Finn, thank you.
Happy to second it.
Thank you. I just actually, well, we got good numbers and about one USA-based program. What I asked for, and I didn't see a lot of in the report, was community engagement. So to make sure that we all of our community partners and anyone else interested in the community and learns about the home share program and the data that we've gathered, that Tara's gathered, before we put this idea to rest, I'd like to make sure we bring it back out into the community. Does anyone else have anything else to offer or say? Councillor Crew?
Urging Republicans to go.
Thank you, Madam Acting Mayor. I just want to clarify why I didn't want to support this. And it's because I don't want to spend, if our staff goes out and pulls together a community meeting, my fear is that that wouldn't be the end of it for us. And I don't know that we should be spending any more staff time on this type of thing. This should be led by the community. And, you know, if there was someone that was willing to facilitate that, but I really don't think that this is something at this point that our staff should be spending our resources on. Not that it's not good, I think, because at Age Friendly, we support the concept, but we're very clear that we didn't want to be the owner or a facilitator of this, because I think the one successful community that was over 30 years in the States, and I'm sorry, I don't have it right in front of me, but it was over 30 years. And I think the other ones only had 2 successful matches. And so it's labor intensive, it's volunteer, reliant on a lot of volunteer work. And I just don't want our staff to be just adding one more thing to their plate that I don't feel that we should be leading. It should be community based.
Councillor Bondi?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I won't support this. I feel I read the report, and it sounds kind of like almost like a fringe sort of program. And in order to find any success, you've had to look to Vermont and, you know, a couple of places maybe in Canada with very, very limited data and very limited success. And to be honest, I'd be, if it wants to happen, that's great. You know, people can do a lot of different things privately, like Airbnbs, etc. You know, renting out your home, your cottage, your recreational property, etc. But for a municipality, I think this thing, or this program, sorry, sounds like it could come with just a huge pile of problems. Like, you know, just from, and again, I'm not very schooled in the actual program itself. I've only read the report that was given to me. But for an elderly person, say my mom, you know, when she lived in her home, you know, to have somebody move in to share light housekeeping duties for free rent, like, to me as a child, like, you know, a grown child, I don't know, like, I wouldn't be very comfortable with it. Not that I'm a pessimist, but I am in this. And hey, you know what? If my mom wanted to do that, then that would be just fine. But as far as the municipality stamping our brand on it, no, I think that's, we're asking for problems. If it wants to happen outside of the municipality, then great. It's a free country. Well, used to be, more or less is. Then that would be okay. But as far as, you know, the municipality of Chatham-Kent taking any sort of ownership on this, I really, really am against that. Thank you.
Well, that's one final comment. I also agree that I don't feel the municipality should own this or should be leading it. But I did feel that even council wasn't given the information. There was a data that was collected by the age-friendly committee, and for some reason it was not shared with councillors. So I'll ask the clerk now, could that be shared, or is that possible, Judy? Yeah, you actually got an email from me on November the 6th with the information that should have went out for the 23rd, and then the 23rd I asked you to share it again. It did go to the Community Development and Human Services staff, I'm pretty sure, but it didn't get to council.
I will look back at that date and see, and if I have it, I'm happy to share.
Thank you. Any other comments? We shall put this to vote then.
All votes are in. Motion fails.
Moving on. We will go to 16, Community Human Services A, improvements for Chatham-Kent Public Health Harm Reduction Program, and Councillor Kirkwood White.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. This also was a very lengthy but comprehensive report by staff, and frankly, one that deserves considerable attention. I would like to move the recommendations in the report, and I have a friendly amendment, which is number 8, which you can see on the screen, that actually asks for the opportunity for municipal councillors to participate and or at their discretion in the mandatory education that's being developed for municipal staff, students, and volunteers. And if I can get a seconder for that, I have a couple of more questions.
Councillor Hall?
Happy to
If you're
second.
willing. Thank you. And I think you also had your hand up.
Yeah, I do have a few comments and questions as well. Thanks.
Go ahead. Oh, did Councillor Kirkwood White? I apologize. She had comments first, and then followed by Councillor Hall.
Yeah, just a couple. On page 3 of the report, it says that folks that are users of harm reduction were not consulted in the preparation of the report, which admittedly was acknowledged as a limitation. I'd like to ask Emily, if I can, to elaborate on how the new project funding that Teresa mentioned earlier in the meeting will help to address this lack of consultation with folks who are ultimately impacted by the decisions that we make around the council table. And in addition to that, I'd like to expand on some of the barriers that resist the acceptance and expansion of the harm reduction approach here in Chatham-Kent. And if there was one succinct message that Emily would be able to deliver to local residents on this particular subject, what would that be?
Hi, Councillor Kirkwood White, and through you, Acting Mayor. I'm going to actually speak for Emily. It's Teresa Bendo, the Director of Public Health. Yes, we do acknowledge that in the report, we did not have an opportunity to engage folks with lived or living experience, but certainly through the community opioid capacity building project, this will really give us an opportunity to better support ideas and those priorities that are developed directly by persons with living or lived experience of substance use, and really help us apply practical on-the-ground solutions that are professionally supported. This project will help us continue to provide more long-term engagement opportunities. So really, as public health moves forward, kind of supporting one of its pillars in its strategic plan around community engagement, we're really looking at developing relationships and partnerships with communities to avoid those kind of one-offs. Hey, want to tell us a little bit about that? And we think that's a more valuable way to gain community engagement in our community. We do in this report acknowledge that we need to connect directly with people with living or lived experience that are accessing our harm reduction services. So as a result, in collaboration with Positive Pathways, we've developed a survey for our needle syringe program service users to, one, kind of understand the best way to gather or deliver an evaluation to our folks, and kind of what measures under client satisfaction are important to them. So this survey and evaluation is expected to be delivered in 2021.
Okay, for those that may have had the opportunity to watch W5 on either Saturday or Sunday, they would have recognized Dr. Mark Tyndall, who was here a couple of years ago to be part of the harm reduction workshop that we had at the Bradley. And this is such a timely subject. And I'm going to ask you, Teresa, to answer the question that I would have asked Emily in terms of what is the one thing, what is the one message that you would like to deliver to the residents of Chatham-Kent with regard to this particular subject?
Okay, it might be a little less than succinct, but in our programs, we see people from all walks of life coming through our doors. However, substance use in our community is also a very hidden issue. And there are so many people that we are not reaching. And we know that this is largely due to stigma, shame, and fear. And that it is important that people can feel safe and access the supports they need. So if we were to say one thing that's succinct, we'd say here in public health that everyone has a role to play when it comes to addressing stigma. And there are a few things that everyone can do to help. The first is to know the facts and really educate yourself about mental health and substance use issues. To reflect and be aware of your attitudes, thoughts, and behaviors. And that our words are really powerful, and how we speak about substance use really shapes our opinions and how people are treated in our community. We would want everyone to help educate others to really challenge myths and stereotypes with facts. For us, especially in this time of COVID, to practice empathy. We are all people first and foremost, and we all deserve to be treated with dignity. Offer support, because most of the time we only see the tip of the iceberg, what people are dealing with. And finally, to learn about available resources in the community. And certainly Chatham-Kent Public Health Unit's website can provide lots of those available resources.
Well said. Thank you very much. And that is the rationale for number 8 in this recommendation, so that more education can be delivered to others that need to know. Thank you so much.
I think we have Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Latimer. Yeah, first of all, I'd just like to thank you very much to Janice Kirkwood for writing the deputation that was shared tonight on behalf of the Chatham-Kent Drug Awareness Council. This group of dedicated volunteers are doing excellent work in the community to raise awareness about drug misuse in the community, and especially about raising awareness about combating the stigma issue that Teresa just mentioned as well. Secondly, I'd really like to commend Emily Guerin for this excellent and very detailed and thorough report. I do have a few questions as well. So my first question is related to recommendation number 6 in this report, about establishing a contract with a biohazardous waste disposal company. So this recommendation, I think it really focuses on what sparked the motion that I brought over about a year ago, I guess. When we heard some feedback in a Drug Awareness Council meeting from Delynn over at Shoppers Drug Mart in Wallaceburg about having to spend money out of her own pocket, basically, to properly dispose of needles dropped off at her location. So to you, either to Emily or to Teresa, I know Emily did a really good job at reaching out to stakeholders when preparing this report. So is this something that Delynn and others that host needle drop-off locations in Chatham-Kent, is this something that they feel will help rectify the problem that they're having with an overabundance of needles to discard of?
Through you, Acting Mayor, thank you, Councillor Hall, for the question. Certainly this recommendation does stem in part from Delynn's feedback, but we had certainly heard, and Emily certainly heard from others in her consultation of their concern about inappropriate needle disposal, whether it be needles found in public or landlords seeking appropriate waste disposal options or others. And so for us, there's no one solution that's the silver bullet. So I think the combination of the things that public health will be implementing within a multi-pronged approach would help this issue. Certainly increasing the number of 24-hour bins in the community, educating municipal staff to dispose of needles safely and appropriately, adding more satellite sites, because in addition to Delynn getting lots of needles returned, which is really great, the volume is quite substantial. So really looking at added satellite sites, particularly in Chatham and Wallaceburg, due to the high volume of transactions, and really expanding the outreach services in Chatham-Kent as well. So I think all of these recommendations and actions in this report are pieces together that will help solve Delynn's issue, and certainly the issue of needles found inappropriately in our community.
Thank you for that answer, Teresa. And I guess to follow up to that, I know you mentioned it about the 24-hour sharp bins, and I know that's about recommendation number 5 in this report is to install 7 new ones across Chatham-Kent. Teresa, can you just explain where these might be located? I think you just touched on it a bit, but can you just maybe clarify that? And I understand we do have some already across Chatham-Kent, right?
Thank you. Yes, currently we have two 24-hour Sharps disposal bins located outdoors at the two locations for public health here in Chatham, at Grand Avenue and at King Street. And they are part of our system where we also have Sharps that can be brought back to a number of locations during office hours. Certainly public health on King Street, the McIntyre IDA Pharmacy in Blenheim, Dillon Shoppers Drug Mart in Wallaceburg. They can be returned to our mobile yellow umbrella mobile outreach service and to Chatham-Kent Community Health Center in Wallaceburg. They have a Sharps disposal bin located inside their building. So we are aiming at this point to install kind of our initial thinking is one 24-hour bin in Blenheim, 3 additional ones in Chatham, and 3 additional ones in Wallaceburg. But certainly those are our initial thoughts, and we will definitely connect with those people living with lived experience, as well as our community partners, to discuss where it really makes sense to put these bins. We will pursue municipal properties and/or agreements with community agencies to situate these bins.
Excellent. Thanks, Teresa. And just one last question, referring to recommendation number 7, exploring a Sharps disposal waste depot. So I know, do you have any early thoughts or feedback or details of what this might look like? And just wondering if there's an opportunity to explore, you know, a partnership or an agreement or something with our waste disposal contractor overall for Chatham-Kent for this.
Yes, certainly. We've had some preliminary conversations with waste management staff here at the municipality, and you know, public health, we're not waste management experts, so we'll really look to the expertise of Ryan and his team to assist us in developing kind of an appropriate and sustainable solution. So we've had some initial conversations about this.
Excellent. That's great to hear. Thank you so much, Teresa. And thanks again. This was a very excellent report. I'm happy to support it this evening. I know it's mentioned in the report that the COVID-19 pandemic is negatively impacting substance use across Canada. And I think with these recommendations, it's not a fix-all solution by any means, but I think it's a proactive and a positive first step to improve and address at least part of the issues locally. So thanks again, and thanks again for the time, Acting Mayor Latimer.
Councillor Sakachi, followed by Councillor Crew.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Latimer. 99% of my questions have been actually asked by Councillor Hall. Teresa, I did have one quick question that I think it's important to touch on openly, and this isn't to you know, to obviously direct any kind of conversation from this very important and sensitive issue. But what is the best word of advice for businesses that are having a routine challenging aspect from this direct issue, especially with the needle discarding? I was recently made aware, which I was not aware of, that if needles are being disposed of on businesses and private property, it's actually up to the owner to remove those needles. And is that correct?
Yes, certainly we would recommend that the business call the customer contact center. Is kind of where we want issues about needles found in the community, and the customer contact center will either contact public health in order to help assist someone in how to pick up those needles, or find a company, or give them some advice about some companies that do pick up, you do needle disposal, or refer them to Public Works, who will assist in disposing of needles on public property.
So what would be your recommendation then if you know, unfortunately, like Councillor Hall said, COVID has really impacted, many different aspects of people's living arrangements and life. And if there are people, businesses that are having people, staying in their back areas and sleeping in that, what would be you feel the best option for them to call, if you could say it in opens so they are aware? And last question is there a potential to share the link that you're discussing with the training with different businesses that are having challenges in regards to proper ways to collect and dispose of the needles as well?
Certainly we can provide the information about disposing of needles properly in the community. We have some resources on the public health website, some videos and some additional information. Certainly we can provide the links to that. And I think that the best thing to do for someone who has businesses who are having these issues, call the customer contact line at 519-360-1998, and they will help direct that the issue to the appropriate department.
Thank you very much, and I really do appreciate the detail in this report and the different lists of recommendations that hopefully do make a significant difference, and the awareness related to it and bringing the awareness. So I do appreciate the detail of this report and the strategy listed in it. Thank you.
Councillor Crew.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Latimer. I think everything I want to say has been covered. But I do have one concern. If it says the money will come out of the 2020 drug strategy, does this mean that is there still going to be enough funds to develop a community drug strategy?
Through you, Acting Mayor. Thanks for the question, Councillor Crew. Yeah, yes, certainly the money approved by council in the reserve fund that is approximately $110,000. The intent of that was to support a coordinator and some a small amount of operating dollars for the drug strategy.
All right, that's good. Yeah, and I think you touched on it. I've been talking to a lot of landlords lately that just throw up their hands, and one who's a very bright person said to me, "We need to get rid of the needle exchange," and I was like, "Oh no, we don't. We need to enhance it." But I'm glad that with this educational program, this comprehensive harm reduction program, that I think that we're moving in the right direction. This is a community problem, and it has to have a community solution. And it's educating everyone. If it's just when someone's speaking negatively about it, educate them on why it's important. It's not just giving out free needles because they don't have to buy needles, right? So it's about keeping people healthy, keeping people reducing the harms that are caused from injections and all of the other things that happen with that in our community. So I'm going to support this, and I think that I like the amendment. So good work, Emily, and everyone over there at Public Health.
No further questions, so we'll put this to the vote.
One more counselor, please. All votes are in. Motion passes.
Alrighty, on to 17B, dedicated gas tax funds for public transportation systems, April 2020 to March 2021 program. Councillor Kirkwood White, you're up.
I promise this is my last one. I would like very much to ask Anne Marie Milson if she is at liberty to share any future plans for the allocation of the funds that might address some of the recommendations that came from the former CK Transit Task Force.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. This is Anne Marie Milson, Manager, Transit and Capital Asset Management, to address Councillor Kirkwood White's question. The report before Council is the annual amount that CK Transit Services has as part of the base budget to offset costs of our current approved service levels for CK Transit. Our base budget is $2.5 million in transit budget, and it is funded by 46% municipal taxes, 32% provincial gas tax, and 22% fares and advertising. So the money is basically used to cover current operations, and there's no future projects planned with this money.
Okay, thank you.
Alrighty, I think I need a mover and a seconder, do I not? So Councillor Kirkwood White and Councillor B. McGregor.
Happy to second that.
Put it to a vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes.
Next item, 17D, Erie Shore Drive, next steps. I believe Mr. Dick is online. Councillor Thompson, do you want to put this on the floor and Councillor Sakachi second it, and we'll call for comments?
That's fine with me. Yes, I'll move it. So seconded.
Go ahead, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Acting Mayor. I guess for Mr. Dick, I appreciate the report as it's laid out. I was curious, and I know it does cover it, but I've had some questions in the community, so I figured it'd be best, and I know they're watching at home, just to go over some of the questions I've had. I guess the first off is who covers the cost of the preliminary report that we're potentially approving tonight?
Thank you, Madam Acting Mayor. This is Tim Dick, Director of Drainage Asset Waste Management speaking. So the answer to the question is that for a preliminary report, as is being recommended with this, for this RFP, the costs will basically be accrued by the municipality until such time as the next course of action is decided upon by council. In the event that council decides to proceed with a final report, the cost of this report, which you're recommending tonight, is quite likely going to be would be made part of the final report. It typically is, as it's relevant work. In the event that council decides not to proceed with the final report, the costs accrued until that time would be paid by general funds of the municipality.
Thank you very much. Who decides eventually the payment ratio if this travels down its expected path?
So thank you, Acting Mayor. So there won't be, that's just part of the point here, Councillor Thompson. The payment ratio is decided within the final report. A preliminary report does not provide an official schedule of assessment. So it won't be until the subsequent step to this one, should council decide to take it, that there will be a decision on what percentages would be paid by the private property owners. And of course, all of those decisions on assessment and decisions on design are vetted through the Drainage Act process, through the various public meetings and opportunities for appeal.
So there will be opportunities for the public to give their input. There will be opportunities for the stakeholders to give their input down the line as well, correct? And opportunities for appeal potentially.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Many opportunities, actually.
Who sets the scope as far as the whole drainage scheme? What would be on or off the table potentially?
Thank you, Madam Acting Mayor. That's a good question, Councillor Thompson. This is a tough call because this is a big drainage scheme with a lot of different moving parts. One of the reasons that it's being recommended, as alluded to in the report, is, as on page 4, it's been 20 years since any engineering firm has looked at it. So the answer is that we try to define a broad enough, within the RFP, a broad enough option for the engineer, and then the engineer defines, based on what he hears and gleans through on-site meetings and public meetings, what the scope of the project would be. The advantage for council, however, in a recommendation such as this, in a preliminary report, is that there is more flexibility for input in terms of if council chose or wanted to ask for more in-depth information or less in-depth information, for example. They can't dictate to the engineer, but they can ask for that through the preliminary report.
Okay, so we're not setting the scope tonight then, correct?
Absolutely not.
Okay. What does the term better use mean? That had some people nervous.
So thank you, Acting Mayor. The term better use is really it's simply part of the Section 78, and the reference is including repair and improvement, and that's the Section 78, which this recommendation is being made under. So it's a preliminary, but it's under Section 78. So better use means how can it be improved, how can it be repaired, how can it be maintained if necessary.
Would it also mean how could it be abandoned so we could turn it back into swampland?
That is an option. If that was something that came to light during the investigation, but that would not happen, nor would any of the other recommendations happen unless this council gave direction to proceed with a final report, which would have to endorse those type of approaches, whatever they were.
And that decision would still be down the line.
Correct.
Okay. One final question. Since you mentioned it and it's been asked by the community, is there nothing that we could build upon in the previous reports, either the Zuzik or the Todgman case going back to 1998, to maybe reduce some of the costs? I know that there's always a frustration within the community on any subject that as a government, we study, we send out for more studies, we send out for more consultants, and we should just get on with the darn work. And those aren't really my words, other than the ones that I've heard in the community.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Certainly, Councillor Thompson, there's a number of advantages, I think, that we would be in a position to provide as we go through this process. We have the Zuzik report that you alluded to, which is a huge document of information and a real resource. We also have a series of testing that has already been completed along Erie Shore Drive itself. And we naturally have many other bylaws and reports, a huge amount of information within our records historically, which whoever the winning consultant is on the submissions would have every right to and likely wish to go through. So absolutely, all of those tools are at their disposal and would be used to varying degrees, again, depending on which direction he or she, heads
based on what their findings are, their survey information, and what they're hearing from the public through the process.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Dick. I appreciate the answers.
Councillor Sakachi?
Thank you, Acting Mayor Latimer. Just have to excuse me for a second, Mr. Dick. I do have a lot of lines through a lot of my questions that Councillor Thompson has asked. So I guess the first question is going to be in regards to the consultant. And I do know the answer to some of these questions, but it's beneficial to ask openly. The consultant is going to be a third party, and it's not going to be, the municipality is going to have no weight on regards to what that consultant is going to basically assess the Drainage Act, correct?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Just for clarification, you said how they're going to assess the Drainage Act. Do you mean how they're going to apply the Drainage Act?
Yes, that's correct. Sorry for misreading. That's correct, Mr. Dick. Yes.
Okay, we the word assess means something different to us. So no, you're correct. It is the whole idea of the Drainage Act is the expectation of the independent engineer and the lack of influence or leverage applied by the municipal councils and so on. Council is to remain, you know, stay out of the process, let the engineer work and so on. Now, that's not to say that council or the constituents that may be involved down the line don't have a say. They certainly, both parties can get a say. And what, you know, it then becomes, so for example, you can't dictate specific things to the engineer. You can, but you may have options at times to, such as refer the report back for further investigation into different matters. So it's a fine line, but absolutely it is an independent engineer.
And as landowners as well, the municipality and the right of way and the roadway and that, we are also going to be included in this assessment, correct?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I can't, you know, I'm not the one writing the report, Councillor. However, I would propose to you that almost every drainage report is typically on average 15% assessment to the road, and many are much more than that. I would be very surprised if we're not assessed, if the road allowance is within the watershed, whatever the work being prescribed turns out to be, wouldn't be assessed, you know, a fairly noticeable amount.
And one of your comments you did indicate in regards to like the large scope of this. So when we're putting this out for RFP, are we going to be basically using the matrix of strictly based on the price because it is an RFP, or do you feel yourself and Thomas as a team will be looking at like experience related to, I can't say similar, but larger scopes of drainage like this one here?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. We would definitely assess a lot of other criteria in addition to cost. Cost would be a proportion of it, usually I believe 30%, something like that. But the other criteria such as experience in larger projects, perhaps coastline experience, perhaps experience in similar projects, those are the type of things. We'll have to work those out, provided, you know, council passes the report tonight. But yes, that would be my thought at this point.
Thank you.
Acting Mayor, it's Thomas Kelly, General Manager of IS. I just want to confirm that 30% will be the proportionate for costs. So 70% will be all those other attributes that we'll be looking for. This is a very, very complex and important study. So those other attributes, skill, knowledge, past experience, are really going to play a significant role in the final selection. And just to follow up to Councillor Thompson's question, is that as they have all of this information available to them, which has been validated most recently by the Zuzek study, we fully expect that the pricing coming in will be much less than, say, a firm that would be starting from scratch. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly and Mr. Dix. And my next question is going to be, Mr. Dick, in regards to if everything goes perfectly with number one in the RFP process, do you have a rough estimation of timeline when we can kind of start seeing some of the initial answers and responses to number one?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I don't, Councillor Sakachi. It's one of the dangers with Drainage Act projects. And the reason that I'm cautious to not start giving timelines is because it is a participative appeal process and public consultation process, and it can be, depending on input and so on, matters can take longer. Sometimes they're shorter, but typically it's not unusual for them to take longer. And we all know that we're in a time right now where nothing is really easy. Everything is just a little bit or a lot more difficult than it normally would be in times when we would consider normal. So, I would say, the preliminary report, it would be at least 6 to 12 months at least.
Thank you, Mr. Dick. And it'd be a fair statement to say to yourself and Mr. Kelly that obviously in the report, for someone who hasn't read it, all that's happening here would be in line with the recommendations of the Zuzek report. Is that correct?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I'm not sure I quite understand the question. Certainly, yes, I would think so, but keep in mind that the Zuzek report is a coastline, a shoreline climate change type report. So this report may in fact address those issues, but it may in fact address other issues that could be found within the Burke scheme, which is inland as well. So,
Acting Mayor, if I could add too, in answer to that question, Mr. Dick is absolutely right. So it's a little different focus than the Zuzek study, but as you may recall, in table 1 of the Zuzek study, there were several options given to the Erie Shore Drive solutions. So, and one of those which was considered was to return to wasteland as well. So anyway, that's when we say the Zuzek study, there was a primary recommendation, but there are also some secondary recommendations as well. And it really would be the role of the drainage engineer to really focus his study on this area and determine what would be some of the best recommendations at still a high level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kelly and Mr. Dick. I do apologize for all the questions, but I did want to make sure that the scope of those questions were answered, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Latimer. I guess a couple of quick questions, or maybe just one, really. Well, no, two, which I'll just ask at the same time because they're related. Is there any estimation as to what this engineering report would cost? And then secondly, as we're being asked to go ahead with this engineering study, which presumably is going to be rather costly, I'm sure it has to be, are we maybe putting the cart before the horse? Because I'm reading that the high cost of the project, with estimates ranging from 22.5 to 84.4 million, depending on the scope of the project. I'm not really seeing that there's any financial commitment from the municipality. Certainly the lack of senior government funding is pretty clear, and that's probably going to remain the same way for quite a long time, considering COVID. And I'm sure the residents are not going to want to pony up $84 million. So my question is, first of all, the cost of the engineering report, and secondly, if we don't have any committed funding for a resolution or a fix to this, to the tune of potentially $84 million, why are we doing this without a financial commitment? Because really, it's not like we're asking for a couple $100,000. Like, we're asking for tens of millions of dollars, and we're kind of commissioning an engineering report to give us that answer. It'd be like me going to look at a $16 million home. Now, wouldn't the realtor be kind of wasting their time showing me that home, because there's no commitment that I'm going to buy it or have that kind of funding? So yeah, that's it. That's my question.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. So Councillor Bondi, I can maybe clarify a little bit because I think maybe there's a bit of misunderstanding here. So with respect to your points, the 22 to 84 million, those 3 bullet points, there's kind of a dividing line, if you will, on page 4 of the report. So that's talking about what we term the Section 4 Drainage Act petition. We're not recommending that. We're recommending the information below for those reasons. So the investigation will be within the existing Burke scheme. It is not an investigation of a new works along the shoreline, at least at this point. Now, there is a chance it could come back and say something to that effect, but the intent here is an authorization under Section 78, which is a work of repair and improvement on an existing drainage works, not on a new drainage works. And remember, from all of our other discussions, the shoreline, there isn't a drainage works along the shoreline. Those are all private, the private properties and the private seawalls and so on. You know, with a couple of question marks in there, but the Zuzek study is looking at something totally different. That's not what this authorization is after. In terms of what it's going to cost, again, you're backing it. You're asking difficult questions. It depends on the size of the scope, but I would suggest that.
Tim, could I answer this question?
Sure,
Tim?
go ahead.
Yeah, so we're always a bit reluctant to provide estimates like this because of the fact that we want to ensure a competitive environment. So if we give a number, we have seen it in the past that's typically what we get back. So I wanted to assure council. Well, but what I wanted to assure council is this is going to be an RFP. We are going to summarize the results of that, and then we're going to come back to council. So you're going to see that number. And before we go forward authorizing this particular consultant, you'll have that ability to approve it. So all that information is still subject to change. You also asked about the financial resources. And, when you're talking about that level of scope, the concern I have is we have a temporary solution out there right now. It's working extremely well. It's minimized the risk of failure, which we identified a year ago between 10 to 40% of the dike failure. I wanted to say that we're still continuing to spend money to ensure that that particular solution is working properly. And our concern is that we really need a long-term plan on this. The solution we have out there is not a long-term plan. So this particular work that we're authorizing is step 1 of the process that says, okay, like what do we really need to do long-term with that? And it's going to identify, as noted in the report, high-level design options, the cost estimate, and also very much stakeholder assessment and engagement in this entire process. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Okay, again, I'm not an engineer, but I guess my question, I don't know if it was answered, is we're commissioning a engineering report study to come back with solutions, presumably, otherwise why would we? And, I'm just reading that the long-term, or maybe short-term, if it can be done quickly, the solutions are incredibly costly. And I don't know that there's any financial commitment from any level of government or the residents to pay for it. So again, I'm, kind of a simple guy, but wouldn't we have some sort of financial commitment? For instance, we put $18.5 million in a bank account for a potential arena. So there was some financial commitment from this level of government. We obviously didn't get the other support that we were looking for, but there was some financial obligation from somebody. So are we not, and again, I'm not an engineer, and you guys do this all day long for a living, and I don't, but without any financial obligation from anybody, are we asking for a very costly solution that we have no clue who's going to pay for it? Again, just bring it down to my grade 9 level.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you, Acting Mayor. So I appreciate the questions, and it's Thomas Kelly again, GM of IES. We feel this is a good investment. You're going to see a number that's going to come back from this RFP that's going to give us some real solid guidance on what we need to do out there. And all of those determinations will be made. You're absolutely correct. We have no financial resources or commitment from upper levels of government. And as you may recall, we actually encouraged in May of last year that the residents themselves developed a petition, and they were not successful. So I would say that we don't have their level of commitment either because of that. We also, so that's the situation, but this report will tell you it will narrow down the scope, first of all, if it's 20 million, if it's 84, if it's something less. And we'll at least have that number. At some point in time, we have to make a decision out there at Erie Shore Drive, what to do, what's going to be our next investment. And what this report will tell us is that this is the direction that we should be going that's most cost effective. So if we don't authorize the report, we will never have that information and we'll continue to struggle with that entire area. So I hope that's helpful.
It is. Thank you, Acting Mayor. Yeah, thank you, Thomas. It does sort of clear it up. So basically, this engineering report is going to bring us back the price tag, maybe on a couple of different levels as to what we can do. So then we have to make the decision from there whether we're going to make a financial commitment based upon this report, if I understand.
That's correct. That's correct. And it'll also, and the next step, so this again is a preliminary report, high-level design options, cost estimate, but it'll be in the ballpark. And the next decision we will ask council to do, so we're going to make you ask you to make a decision on the request for proposal for selecting the engineering firm, whatever that number is. He'll come back with the preliminary report and he'll give you some of this high-level cost estimates. And then the decision will be, do we want to go with the full blown report, which is going to be, that's where the costs really become high. So the costs at this stage that we're talking about are manageable, and they give us good direction on really the blueprint of this is the direction you need to go as a municipality.
Great,
and
thank you,
if I
Acting
might,
Mayor.
sorry, Acting Mayor, if I might add, it also adds, it will add an exact assessment schedule again, which will delineate how much the road pays and how much everyone else pays if they're assessed. The final report.
Okay, thank you, Acting Mayor. Just quickly, the question's been raised through all of our emails. Is this the kind of expertise that is not held by our engineering department, because we have a sizable engineering department? Is this something that's outside of your expertise that we have to go outside?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. So again, one of the keys to the Drainage Act, Councillor Bondi, is the independent engineer. And because road authorities and municipalities are typically part of drainage reports and drainage solutions in terms of the financial implications, it's arguably a conflict. How would we decide if we were to try to design this thing in-house or come up with some sort of, we need an expert. I mean, this is the best recommendation that we can make for you tonight. It is, I've been around this thing for 25 years. This is the best recommendation we can give you. And it hasn't been looked at in 20 some years. It's very much the best we can do. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah,
but
if I could add to that, Acting Mayor, is that you may recall last year I came to council in open and I showed some design concepts of what we thought it would take. So those were developed internally. We absolutely do have the expertise to do this. However, as Mr. Dick described, 15% approximately of that final cost will be borne by the municipality. So what's very, very important in the Drainage Act is that you have an independent engineering consultant who's running the show. And that's so that, you don't design something that favors one land over another or, municipality over landowners. They must be very independent, and we're engaged in this process. So we do have the expertise. We could do it, but by the very nature of the Drainage Act, that consultant must be independent. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. And Tim and Thomas, thank you very much. And I get it. Legislation is legislation. We have to abide by it. Thank you very much for your answers.
You're welcome.
Seeing no further hands or questions, we'll put it to the vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes.
Moving on, we are at notices of motion, and I believe there is only one, and it is from yours truly. Judy, did you want to put that up? Or Madam Clerk, I apologize.
We're just receiving it tonight.
Oh, right. So I have to, I will read it. I, Councillor Mary Claire Latimer, hereby provide notice that I will bring forward the following motion at the March 1st council meeting for discussion and voting. That administration conduct a service review on service centers, municipal information desks, and customer service delivery, and report back to council before fall 2021, prior to the formation of the 2022 budget. The service review should have identified changing client habits, the movement to cashless payments, and online transactions and phone service delivery models. The service review should consider closing service centers, municipal information desks, or reducing, combining services into existing other municipal operations, hubs, and discussions should include other services provided at each location, for example, library services and police services, to determine if buildings could be divested. The report should review the Service Ontario offices and recommend options moving forward. The service review should include engaging the community to determine what solutions make the most sense. Seeing no other notices of motion, we will move on to closed session reports. Councillor McGregor?
Councillor McGregor, we can't hear you. Can you try one more time, Councillor McGregor? There you go.
Thank you. Thank you. I was waiting to be unmuted, Judy. Sorry. I know I'm bad and I have to be muted on a regular basis, but thank you. Okay, so closed session report for Monday, February 1st. All councillors present. Council directed administration on proposed acquisition of land by the municipality and advice that is subject to solicitor client privilege, including communications necessary for the purpose with regard to Kyle Trail South, Section 239, 2C and F of the Municipal Act 2001. Personal matter about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees with regard to CAO employment contracts, Section 2392B of the Municipal Act 2001. And council received information on proposed acquisition of land by the municipality with regard to 55 Forest Street, Chatham, Section 2392C of the Municipal Act. And I will so move through the acting mayor.
Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Brock McGregor?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Anyone opposed? Oh, we have to vote.
Just a point of order, Madam Clerk. I think I double tapped my vote and accidentally abstained. It's Councillor Harrigan. I vote yes.
Okay, we will make note of that. Thank you. All votes are in. We'll correct that there, Councillor Harrigan. Motion passes.
Alrighty, on to approval of communication items. We had a few questions, so we'll have those first, and then I'll ask for a motion to be moved in a seconder. Councillor Kirkwood-White, you had some questions.
Sorry, yes, thank you very much. I had a bunch of questions, but I sent them in advance of the meeting and didn't get any responses, so I'm going to withdraw my request.
Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Councillor Kirkwood-White. Apologize. We thought that just from an open, transparent place that you would ask the questions during council. We can definitely email the answers to you tomorrow on the questions that you posed on some of those items.
Is it appropriate for me to just let you know what they are? Or you can read them out and respond in open if you like.
The choice is yours. Someone else, I do know that there are a couple other councillors that have questions on some of the ones that you had raised. It's entirely up to you if you'd like to ask them to get the answers in open, or if you just need a quick response. It's entirely up to you.
Well, I don't think it would hurt for the general public to hear the responses.
Okay, I can read them out from your email if that's what you would like.
That's great, because I can't find them.
No worries, I can do that. Okay, so the first one that was pulled, we have from Councillor Latimer and Councillor Kirkwood-White, number 1A, and it is with regards to the 2021 census population. Councillor Kirkwood-White, should we give a general public heads up with regards to the 2020 census and encourage them to complete the questionnaire? And I believe Dawn would like to speak to that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we have in the past years encouraged people to complete the census. Today's the first public notice that we have that the census will be occurring in May of this year. When we get a little bit closer, I would encourage council to revisit the item towards the end of April. We'd have then some exact timing or more precise timing as to when the census would be delivered. And we'd certainly be encouraging all members of Chatham-Kent that are eligible to complete the census to do so. And based on our growth in the last couple of years, I'd expect that we're going to get some very good news out of the census. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dawn.
You're welcome.
No, I'm good, Judy. Thank you.
Okay, the next one is 1D, and it is the letter from Michael Bloomberg, founder of the Bloomberg Philanthropies, from the mayor of New York City. And we have a question from Councillor Latimer and Councillor Kirkwood-White, and I believe Mayor Caniff was going to take the question. So the question is, are we going to submit something with regards to this challenge? Mayor Caniff, are you there?
Madam Chair, it's Don Shropshire speaking. Council was notified earlier in the day that one of Mayor Caniff's family members had a medical procedure today, and that he might have to excuse himself a little bit early as a result. But I did talk with Mayor Caniff, and he did confirm that he would encourage the municipality to complete an application. It's just within the last couple of days that we received this application, so we don't have any further details yet in terms of what we'd be providing, but he was interested in the opportunity. The letter did indicate that the top 50 worldwide would be given an opportunity to receive some additional support from the foundation to look at how they could further their idea.
Okay, the next one is 1E with regards to one-time funding for the 2020 calendar year supporting paramedic services and dispatch centers. We have Councillor Oche, Latimer, and Kirkwood-White. And Chief Case, if you want to take the question, and this one was, did we or are we going to apply?
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This isn't an application. That funding has been awarded to us, and we're currently working with Medivi to work out how best to allocate those funds. So we have actually received that funding, or we're about to receive that funding from the province.
Councillor O'Shea, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Acting Mayor Latimer, thank you. So will this, we received this money. Does that mean we're going to have 500,000 to push towards the new budget, that, as we had money obviously set aside for this already since it happened in 2020?
Apologies. Through you, Madam Acting Mayor and Madam Clerk. Council will recall that we brought several reports throughout 2020 asking for additional funding to support emergency staffing for EMS. So some of this money will go to repay that additional funding that you've already allocated, and the rest will be allocated regarding costs. So there'll be costs for personal protective equipment and other services that our EMS providers have utilised in the fight against COVID. So at this time, this money is accounted for and has been spent throughout 2020.
Correct. So it's been spent, but through our past budget. So this is replacing that money.
So the money has been spent by through the allocation of emergency funding for the supervisor, which was $40,000 a month to allow us to have additional supervision on the road for not only the EMS crews and the fire crews, but also our EMS provider has been accruing additional expenses by purchasing additional PPE. So this is effectively addressing the expenses that have taken place throughout 2020. I hope that answers your question, Councillor O'Shea.
So none of this is going to be left over, is basically what you're saying.
I don't know that for sure, and I'll ask Mr. Quinton to jump in if he wishes. But at the moment, this money has currently been. This is repaying the debts that have been built up over the past 7 or 8 months whilst we've been dealing with COVID on the front line.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. It's Gord Quinton, Chief Financial Officer. Maybe I can add to that. So as we reported in October, in our October variance, we have spent about $17 million on our COVID response. Part of that was the money that Medivi has spent on the additional supervisor that council approved in April in response to COVID, and also for personal protective equipment and other activities that they're doing related to COVID. So this is that's been tracked as expense. We didn't anticipate getting funding. There was a question on whether we would get 50% dollars or 100%. It does appear that luckily the province is coming through with 100% dollars to fund our COVID-19 response from EMS. So it's good news. It was a risk that we wouldn't get covered, but it has no impact on the 2021 budget discussion deliberations. We were anticipating that this was going to come.
So this is just going back into the reserve that we must have took the money out of in the first place.
Yeah, as you could say that we've advanced the funds all year long, and when we get this was the funding announcement. We actually haven't received the funds yet, but when we do get it, it basically it'll replenish the accounts to make it whole, so that we do not have a deficit in EMS in 2020 because of COVID.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chief, and thank you, Acting Mayor.
Okay, next item is 1F, and it is with regards to the Eco Action Community Funding Program. I believe Bruce McAllister will take the question, and the question is, are we going to apply for this funding?
Yes, thanks, Acting Mayor. The funding is actually not open to municipalities. It provides financial support to nonprofits and non-government organizations for local action-based projects that produce measurable positive effects on the environment. And it's really focused on, it's specifically scoped to projects that deal with water or watersheds. That being said, we have connected with the LTVCA because there are some potential projects that they're trying to match funding for that might be a good fit. So so that's where we're at with that funding program.
Okay, the next question is 1G with regards to municipal modernization program. The question is, are we eligible? And I believe Gord Quinton will answer the question.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. It's Gord Quinton, Chief Financial Officer. We did receive a new letter that was put into the council package about the announcement at Roma of the second phase of the municipal modernization program. It's a program that will help us identify efficiencies or do a study on things that will make us more efficient at Chatham-Kent. And this is the second, like I said, this is the second round. Back at the December 2nd, 2019 council meeting, it was a similar program. What was out, we did through a report from the clerk's office, we did apply to this program for our electronic records management study. In the spring of 2020, we heard that we're not successful in that application. So this is another round where we can submit a project up to $250,000 with the expectation of getting up to 65% funding on it. And EMT will be considering options and bringing it back for council's consideration at the March 1st meeting. If any of councilors would like to contact me, if they have any ideas that you'd like EMT to consider, we can talk about that offline.
Okay, thank you. The next one is with regards to 2E, and it's a resolution from the Municipality of Mississippi Mills with regards to a request for revisions to the municipal election. And I can take that question. And the question was, do we need to support this? Councillor Kirkwood-White, I did call the municipality that had passed this resolution with regards to a clarification of what it was that they required. And it seems in their municipality, a small township close to Ottawa, people were doing pay-to-play schemes where rural communities, families would lease out their garage for $100 so that non-resident electors could be permitted to vote in the elections, municipal elections. We don't see that here in Chatham-Kent, knock on wood, but if council was interested in supporting the resolution. The other thing is I did contact our Director of Legal Services. We had a conversation with regards to the remaining portions. We haven't spent a lot of time investigating that, but rest assured, if we had any concerns with the Municipal Elections Act, we would bring it to the attention of council if that was the case.
Thank you for the response.
Okay. Councillor Kirkwood-White, are you still there?
Yes.
Okay, I just didn't know if we lost you or not. So are you looking to move anything on that resolution?
I don't think so. It doesn't appear that you're needing us to do that right now. So.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, and then the last one that you had on your list, Councillor Kirkwood-White, was G with regards to the use of automatic speed enforcement photo radar. Unfortunately, Chief Khan isn't here at this time, but I could forward him your question tomorrow and get an answer for you if that's what you would like.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, we'll do so.
I think we need a mover and a seconder for the approval of communication items first. So could I ask Councillor Sakachi and Councillor Solomon to so move and second?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. On to non-agenda business. Pardon? Oh, anybody opposed? Sorry. Hearing none, we'll move to non-agenda business. I do know we have one councillor. If anyone else, put your hands up. Oh, we got a few hands. Councillor Crew.
Thank you, Madam Acting Mayor. My question's for April. I just would like to get an update on the vaccine rollout in Chatham-Kent. I know that people are interested in just to see where we're at with that and what we can expect to see, since we're not meeting till March again.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Latimer. It's April Retek, General Manager, Community Human Services. With respect to our vaccine rollout for Chatham-Kent, as I indicated last council meeting, I believe, I spoke about where we are within the plan. We continue to work in partnership between Chatham-Kent Public Health, Chatham-Kent Health Alliance, EMS, and the rest of the partners within the Chatham-Kent Ontario Health Team, really being ready at any time to move forward with our vaccine rollout. When I spoke last with council, I had talked about how long-term care residents, long-term care staff, and long-term care essential caregivers were first up in terms of being vaccinated as per the provincial guidelines. With the shortage of vaccine that we are all reading about in the news, the province changed that direction to be long-term care residents and high-risk retirement home residents only for the first rounds of vaccine. So Chatham-Kent received, we were ready to receive vaccine really a number of weeks ago. Our teams have been ready. Last Monday, we received our first allotment of vaccine, and that came just kind of early morning. By 2:12, our teams were already out, mobilized, and had begun immunizing within long-term care homes in Chatham-Kent. By Tuesday, they had immunized all of, we had used all the vaccine we had received, and certainly had immunized in 3 of our long-term care homes. I do think it's important to note that we look at the provincial ethical framework for vaccination, and part of that is not only our part to assess risk, we also have to have the homes completely ready to accept us into the homes, and that includes things like kind of staffing on their part, having all of the resident consents ready for us to move forward, and a number of other details that make it a smooth process for our teams to go in and immunize. We were expecting vaccine early this week. It has been delayed yet again. And so I don't have a definitive date of that next allotment. What I can confirm for council is that the moment that we are notified that we will be in receipt of vaccine, we will be ready to move immediately, because we are anticipating a 24-hour notice this time of vaccine arriving in Chatham-Kent. And we will then move forward and complete our long-term care homes, and then move to our high-risk retirement homes. And then we have to await notification from the province of what that next group of immunized the next group of individuals that we will be required to immunize in the process. So I'll stop there, but that's what the plans are for the next couple of weeks.
Thank you, April. I think that people just want to know that we're ready when it gets here, and it's out of your control, but you're ready and on the mark and ready to go when it gets here. Thank you.
Councillor Sakachi? Oh, sorry, I apologize. Councillor Sakachi, I believe Mr. Shropshire wanted to make a comment.
Thank you. Just, it's another item, Madam Chair. I'm not sure if Councillor Sakachi has the same item or not.
Did you, Councillor Sakachi, do you mind if Mr. Shropshire?
Absolutely. Go proceed, Mr. Shropshire. No problem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a brief message for council and our residents that on Wednesday morning, we've been notified that there's going to be an announcement about our SWIFT RFP results. So we're hoping for some good news on Wednesday morning. We'll make sure that council has any copy of any of the materials that we receive for the announcement, and we'll make the commitment to come back to our next council meeting with a fulsome report so that we can share the news with all of our residents. But this is an opportunity to expand high-speed fiber investments across Chatham-Kent. So Wednesday morning, we'll hopefully be getting some good news. Thank you.
Councillor Sakachi?
Thank you, Acting Mayor Latimer. My question is also to Dr. Redike. Councillor Crew did ask the majority of my questions. I'd like to thank Dr. Redike for always being available to answer questions. One question in the community that Dr. Redike was able to answer for myself that I feel should be answered as well is in regards to how the vaccines were allotted when they first came in. I know you did touch on it on your response, but I was wondering if you could just talk through that process very briefly.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Latimer. Certainly, Councillor Sakachi, a great question. Part of what the vaccine team does, and like I already indicated, that's multiple community partners sit at that table. They review a number of factors that are part of the provincial ethical framework for vaccine administration. And part of that really looks at risk and the different risk levels that occur in all of our long-term care homes. That could be anything from kind of the layout of the home, something very simple. Could be whether or not homes have a memory unit or not. Could be the size of the home. And so they take all of these pieces and then have conversation about that to really look at what homes have a greater risk for residents. And then after that piece, they then look at the home's readiness to receive our vaccine teams going into long-term care facilities and then eventually our retirement homes. So when they combine those things together, it certainly helps them look at where to go first. All of our long-term care homes and all of our retirement homes for us here in Chatham-Kent are that #1 priority. So it really is a well thought out process of really looking at every single kind of possible factor to pull together to determine kind of where we went first, and then coming out for that next allotment of vaccines, where we will then kind of take our teams and get as many people immunized as quickly as we can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no other hands, reading of the bylaw, first and second readings, Councillor Finn and Councillor Pinsino. You move and second that?
Happy to move it.
Happy to second it.
Third and final readings, Councillor Wright, Councillor Harrigan.
motion on that.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Anybody opposed? Just before adjournment, I wanted to take time to formally thank Madam Clerk Judy Smith and her trusty assistant Meredith Cadot for assisting and their assistance and guidance to this acting mayor this evening. Adjournment, Councillor Carmen McGregor.
Thank you. And through Acting Mayor Latimer, I would like to move the resolution for closed session adjournment. And I would move that Chatham-Kent Council adjourn to its next meeting to be held on Monday, March 1st, 2021. And that Chatham-Kent Council authorize itself to meet in closed session on that day to discuss any matters permitted by the Municipal Act. And before that's seconded and we adjourn, I would just mention that the February meeting was canceled and our next meeting is March 1st, as I stated. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. That's a wrap. Oh,
No, you got a
seconder,
seconded
sorry.
vote.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Solomon. Would you do that for me?
I want to second that so we can have a nice vote and end the evening.
Anyone opposed? Sounds like we're off to a wonderful evening. Thanks, everyone.